the pilot plant, demo plant, and commercial plants. So
Mhm.
what is the main difference between these three?
So a pilot plant is, you've got something that works in a lab, it works in a 2-liter reactor. Right, great, okay. You can't use that. The chemical reaction will work, it works, but you don't know if it'll work at a higher scale because physics doesn't always scale. So if something works in a 2-liter reactor, will it work in a 20,000-liter reactor? So you have to look at your main process operations and build and apply them in a plant that is big enough to be representative of commercial scale. Because at the end of the day, you need to make it at commercial scale to make any money. So
Mhm.
you build the plant, which is very, very small, typically 10 to 15 tons a year of production. But the processes and the chemicals and the equipment is representative of what you would use. So, for example, you put in a very small filter press, you know you can get huge filter presses. What you need to avoid is doing something like, hey, in the lab it worked really well, we got 97% recovery, but we were using lab-grade oxygen. Yeah, you can't use lab-grade oxygen in a commercial plant. So your pilot plant, you have to be using industrial oxygen, and you might not get the same recovery rates with that. So things like that, you're really proving that what worked in the lab potentially does work at full scale. You might not have to model the entire process because there'll be some process steps which don't. They're so they're so well known that you don't need to model them. You might just send something to a tank and leave it there or empty it, or you might just stop, you might just make a slurry and not actually go through to drying it because you can dry it. You don't need to spend the time and money drying it, for example. One of the drawbacks of a pilot plant is quite often it's in batch, so you don't get the recycle lines. It's not continuous operation. It's sort of, you put something in one end and then it goes out to the end into a sack and then you take it away, and you don't get that recycling. So you don't see things like buildup of unwanted elements and that kind of thing. So that's the pilot plant. And you really have to do that to really do your equipment selection on your, are you going to use a filter press? Are you going to use a vacuum filter? Are you going to use some other kind of filter? Which one's the best? What are the process parameters? And you use it as a giant lab to prove your technology, fine tune your process, and do your main equipment selection. Now, the demo plant is something different, and that's normally built outside. A pilot plant's normally in a shed. But a demo plant, it's the full commercial plant, but at a much, much, much smaller scale, and a sub-economic scale. It's not supposed to make money. And you build it. So if your commercial production's 100,000 tons a year, your demo plant will produce 1,000 tons a year. Your pilot plant, 15 tons a year. That's sort of scale we're talking about. And the reason you build it is purely so you can raise the funds for your full plant. If you build a demo plant that's a sub-economic scale, you can run it for a year and you have all the data you need. You know it works. You know the waste products. You know exactly what the waste products are, how much of them there are, how much you can recycle. You know your reagent consumption, your electricity consumption, how often you need to replace filter membranes. You can demonstrate to any investor that you can make this product in spec and at the capacity you say you can, because they're watching you do it. That is, a lot of people look at that and go, oh, we don't need to do that. We've proven it in the pilot plant. We know we can make it. We made 2 sacks last year of this particular product. We know we can do it. All we need is $500 million to build our commercial plant. The problem is no one gives them the money, because they start asking questions like, okay, what are your waste products? How are you going to get rid of them? What's the cost to dispose of them? What is your real reagent consumption? Whereas a demo plant, they see a baby version of what they're investing in. And, you can do process improvements. You can already see where your bottlenecks are, and you can use all the information from that in your design of your commercial facility. And the investors know, if you build it, these are the costs, these are your OPEX costs, and this is the product, and I know it sells for that. So it adds another 2 years at least possibly 3 to your scale up program, but it massively reduces the risk to that billion, $500 million that you want to build the investment to build your commercial plant. And if it's a new technology and you've never done this before because you're a new company, you pretty much have to do it.
So I think we know several examples, right, in the past where companies like kind of skip the demo plants and then they realize that it's not the best decision they have made. There are a lot of
Yes.
use. I know of those things.